Let's start with the fact that you're not in your prime anymore. The inescapable fact of training jiu-jitsu over 40 is that you're not in your prime, which means your athletic ceiling is lower. Your athletic ceiling, your potential was highest in your 20s, and then every year after that, it's a slow and gradual march to oblivion. At 40, you're still not so far off of that. You can still kind of remember what it was like to move your body and to be able to do all the great things and recover and all that. But that's not you anymore. And so you have to approach training jiu-jitsu a little differently. You can still be successful, but it's going to take a little different approach. So I came up with a list. These are the 6 laws of training jiu-jitsu over 40. Let's talk about it. It actually feels a little strange to be staring into a camera and making content again. I took a little break for a minute because last month we ran Old Grappler Summit, which is our over 40 jiu-jitsu retreat, and I got insanely busy, and then I took a little social media break after that. And I can't convey how amazing it ended up being. Absolutely incredible. There are not enough superlatives to describe what a killer event it was. So much so that we're doing 2 events at the same retreat venue next year, a spring event and a fall event. And I am stoked because I just got a commitment from Huron Gracie to be one of the instructors at our spring event. So if you've ever wanted to go to a jiu-jitsu retreat, I'm telling you, this is the one to go to. Just head over to oldgrapplersummit.com, and I have a feeling this one's going to sell out quick, so you might want to make a decision sooner than later. All right, let's talk about the 6 laws of training jiu-jitsu over 40, starting with law number 1. Technical development is the only sustainable pathway to jiu-jitsu over 40. As I mentioned in the intro, you're not in your prime anymore over 40, and that ceiling gets lower year after year after year. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't continue to get stronger. It doesn't mean that you can't become more mobile. It doesn't mean you can't become more flexible. It doesn't mean your attributes can't improve when you're older. It just means that you can only improve relative to you and your ceiling. That's what it means, and that ceiling is lower, which means that when your 20-year-old training partners are rolling at, I don't know, a heart rate of 180 beats per minute, well, by the time you're in your 50s, that's your max. You can't get anywhere close to that, which means they're running the race in a Porsche 911. You get to run the race in a 1976 Ford. Is that vehicle capable? Sure. Will it get you where you need to go? Sure. But it's a very different experience. And so the focus needs to shift. Yes, of course, we're trying to maximize ourselves physically. We have to attack this from multiple dimensions. But ultimately, it means that the focus needs to be primarily on technical and skill development. Right? That's the only pathway. It's the only pathway if you're smaller, if you're weaker, even if you're younger. Or, you have to develop technical solutions to be successful against those opponents that are bigger, stronger, faster. And that takes time. It takes training. It takes dedication. It takes becoming a student of the art of jiu-jitsu. When you're older, you have to be a student of the art of jiu-jitsu. When you're young, attributes are a good lubricant for lack of technique, right? You don't need a perfect armbar when you're 20, right? You can make it work. Even if it's a 50% armbar, you can make it work because you're dynamic, you're fast, you're explosive, you can put muscle into it. But over the years, you realize that your technique has to be perfect, especially once you're at an age where you are significantly slower than your opponents. I'm in my 60s now, and I am significantly slower than I used to be. I'm noticeably slower. And so I have to have perfect sensitivity so I can feel that moment when there's an opportunity for something to happen. And I need perfect timing so that I can begin executing that move immediately without hesitation because I don't have the horsepower to make it work once that window is open further. I've got to operate on the leading edge of those windows of opportunity. And that takes, training. You have to develop a real mapped out game that's programmed into your body. And you have to have the timing and the sensitivity. And the good news is those things can continue to improve year after year after year after year. You can get more technical. You can get deeper in your understanding and your knowledge, even though your physical attributes are starting to fail you. And that's the only path. It's the only sustainable path. So become a student of jiu-jitsu. That's law number 1. Law number 2, mobility is the foundation of athletic performance. When people discover jiu-jitsu, within the first couple months, almost everybody has a similar thought. They think, man, I need to get stronger. I need to get in better shape. I got to go to the gym, right? Everybody intuitively thinks that they need to get stronger to have more success in jiu-jitsu. And I'm not saying that strength doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Someone that's freakishly strong, they can present real challenges, even to people with skill. But jiu-jitsu is not a strength contest. Here's a question. What is the purpose of strength for jiu-jitsu? Well, the purpose of strength is not so you can muscle your opponents around. The purpose is it allows you to move yourself with greater efficiency. Jiu-jitsu, as I've said before a bunch of times on this channel, is a movement art, right? We're just moving ourselves. You're moving yourself out of danger and you're moving yourself into positions where you have offensive opportunities. And even when we're moving our opponents, we're sweeping them, we're throwing them, we're not moving them, we're moving ourselves into a position where we have leverage and then attaching ourselves to them, and then we're moving ourselves and they're just coming along for the ride. So everything about jiu-jitsu is fundamentally a movement art. And so the number one goal you should have as a jiu-jitsu athlete is to have great mobility, because that's going to let you express beautiful jiu-jitsu. If you have poor mobility, your ceiling in jiu-jitsu is very, very limited. You're never going to have beautiful jiu-jitsu, right? Fluid, flowing, dynamic, the ability to make efficient transitions and so on. If you move poorly, you're going to have crude jiu-jitsu. On the other hand, if you move well, and strength is part of it, certainly, right? You need to be strong enough. You need to be strong relative to yourself. You don't have to be immensely strong in an absolute sense to do jiu-jitsu, but you do need to be strong enough to move yourself efficiently. That's really the metric as far as I'm concerned. And then everything else is a function of being able to move yourself in and out of positions as needed. And so what helps you do that? Well, doing mobility drills will help you. Animal movements, primal movements. There's gymnastica natural, there's the Cameron chain stuff, there's a ton of mobility stuff out there. But you should be doing something. You should be doing some flexibility work. You should be doing some mobility work. You should be doing some strength work, with the goal of allowing you to express jiu-jitsu better. That's one of the things that declines most notably when people get older, is they get stiffer and more rigid and less mobile. We're trying to keep ourselves mobile, and jiu-jitsu is a phenomenal art for that. It really is. It will actually probably add years to your life. It beats you up. It's going to maybe cause some issues in other ways, but it will keep you moving well, which is one of the primary determiners of quality of life later, in your later years. So don't lose sight of the fact that jiu-jitsu is a movement art. Yeah, of course, go lift weights, do all that stuff. But don't get locked into this mentality where the only metric that matters is being stronger. What matters is strength that lets you move. Intensity is a spice. It's not the main course. And look, I get it. We all like to hammer hard, right? Once you're in shape in jiu-jitsu, once you have a cardiovascular system that can push hard, It feels good to train hard. It feels productive, right? You leave the academy just depleted. You hammered hard. You didn't take any rounds off. You did everything. You didn't half-ass the warm-up. You did the whole thing, and you're walking out the door hoping you don't get mugged as you leave the academy because you are drained. And that feels good. It feels productive. It feels like we improved. It feels like we got better. But there are two problems with that when you're older. There are two problems with that. The first is that if you keep the intensity high every time you train, you're not going to be able to train as frequently. And that's it. You're not going to be able to train as frequently because your recovery is going to take longer. The most important metric, in my opinion, in terms of technical development, is how frequently do you train? Frequency beats everything. If I train 5 days a week and you train twice a week, at the end of the year, I will have dozens more training sessions than you. I mean, do the math on it. It's like 200 training sessions versus 100 training sessions. I will have trained twice as much as you. And you don't think that that's going to make me significantly better, even if I didn't push all that hard in those training sessions? Because here's the second issue with pushing really hard, is that it actually slows your technical development. Why? Because when you are at maximum intensity, the only thing you can do is play your A game. That's it. That's all you can do is play your A game. That armbar that you learned last Tuesday, forget it. You're never going to hit it at full intensity. You're only going to be able to hit the techniques that you learned 2 years ago that you've been chiseling away at and incorporating them into your core game. So if your goal is to expand your game, to become more fluent and have more technical options, the only way to do that is to lower the intensity so that the windows of opportunity are held open longer, so you can think, you can react, you can practice, you can explore, you can become more experimental and more exploratory with your jiu-jitsu. That's how you get good at jiu-jitsu. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't train with intensity some of the time. You should. This is a martial art after all. And being able to redline yourself and take yourself to 11 might save your life someday if you're in a self-defense encounter. But those should be reserved to specific goals that you might want to reach. Let's say you're training for a competition. Great. Take a couple months, increase your work capacity, hammer hard, focus your training, narrow in on your A game, and go for it. Or you're training for a belt test, or you're training just because you want to push yourself for the next couple months. But it should be the spice. It shouldn't be the default setting that you train at. A couple times a year, it's okay to push yourself to a higher level of fitness and all that stuff. Great. But the rest of the time, chill out a little, train more frequently, leave some in the tank when you leave the dojo so that you come back tomorrow and you're not too beat up. And that's the way you get good at jiu-jitsu, and it's way more sustainable. We tend to think of recovery as us doing nothing. You go train hard one night, you come home, you go to sleep, you get up the next morning, you get in your car, you drive to work, you sit at a desk all day. Now it's been 24 hours since you moved your body and you have done nothing to recover. And no wonder your neck hurts and your back is jacked up and you're stiff and you get up out of your chair to go to the bathroom and your joints are creaky. You have done nothing to aid your recovery. And the older I get, the more I realize that keeping those joints moving, keeping the body in motion is really the key to recovery. And so what does active recovery look like? Well, you do stuff. You go on a long walk. I love doing that. I live in the hills in San Diego. I go on walks all the time in the hills, and it's phenomenal. I go get some vitamin D. I'm getting the kinks out in the morning when I'm real stiff. It means doing some yoga, some flexibility work. It means maybe doing a little foundation training. It's a great modality for back stiffness and back issues. It might mean doing a little bit of mobility work. I mean, keep it light. We're not talking about a full-blown workout where you're actually tired. We're talking about something that invigorates you, gets some blood flow into your system so that you can begin actively recovering and get your body feeling better. Doing nothing is not recovery. It's just making those aches and pains hang on longer. So take your recovery as seriously as your training, because it's just as important as your training. Even Olympians, and they're half your age, they recover, right? You train hard, you stimulate those muscles to grow, you stimulate that athletic performance, and then the other side is that you actively recover. So I think it's critical when you're training jiu-jitsu as an older athlete. The details matter much more when you get older. Things like sleep, hydration, nutrition, supplementation, biohacks. All of that stuff is much more important when you get older because you're having to do more with less. What we're trying to do is optimize our bodies so that we can train jiu-jitsu. But again, we're running the race with a 1976 Ford. And yeah, that car it can be dependable, it can be reliable, it can get you where you need to go. But you have to baby that car a little bit. You got to wash it on the weekends. You got to make sure the tires are inflated. You have to make sure your radiator is topped off and your oil levels are correct. You have to warm it up before driving it. You got to make sure the gas you're putting in it is good. And the same is true with our bodies because we're trying to optimize our ability to do jiu-jitsu. And everything matters. Sleep is massively important. You need to be getting good quality sleep, which means setting a bedtime. It means respecting the bedtime. It means dimming the lights in the evening so you're not staring at, bright lights before bed. It means limiting screen time before bed. If you have sleep apnea or any of those things, you got to get those worked out because anything that robs you of good quality sleep. And by the way, I have a bit of sleep apnea because I was always a mouth breather most of my life until I started taping my mouth at night. I use mouth tape and it has been a game changer in terms of my ability to get good quality sleep. I wake up way more refreshed now than I used to. I used to not even notice how bad I felt because it was the normal. And now I see how bad my quality of sleep was and how important it is. Same with hydration. Municipal water is garbage, right? It's got fluoride, it's got chlorine, it's got all kinds of stuff. So I use a reverse osmosis system, which gives you perfectly clean water. Unfortunately, it also removes the minerals. So minerals are incredibly important, electrolytes, which means salt, basically. And I'm an advocate of high quality salt, Himalayan pink salt, Baja Gold, Hawaiian red, or red Hawaiian salt has the highest mineral content. And so I am very liberal with my salt. Don't use table salt, iodized table salt. That's garbage. It doesn't have minerals. Use good quality salt. I will toss it in my mouth before training. I will put it in my water bottle. If you want to use an actual product like Element to put in your water bottles, that's great too. They come in different flavors and all that. But honestly, salt does the trick. Supplementation, here too, making sure that you're getting adequate protein, making sure, a little creatine, it's good for your brain, the basic vitamins, zinc, vitamin D, magnesium, right? Just the basic stuff you should be doing. And all of those things matter. Nutrition, the food you eat matters. I notice a massive difference in my physical output when I'm eating better than not eating better. When I'm eating a lot of sugar and a lot of carbs and a lot of processed food, man, I just don't feel that energetic. Whereas if I eliminate the garbage, and really mostly nutrition comes down to eliminate garbage. That's 90% of the battle. Eliminate the garbage and then make good choices on the remaining and your nutrition will be fine. All those things matter way more when you're older, so pay attention to those things. Your ego can get you hurt. I have devoted hours of time on this channel talking about the ego, right? And the ego is often maligned, but the ego actually has a positive side, right? No one achieves anything without having a strong ego, right? We use our ego to fuel our drive and our ambition. And so there's a positive side to ego. It's your sense of self. But when we talk about ego in a jiu-jitsu sense, what we're talking about is an unhealthy ego, the fragile ego, the ego that makes you push way, way harder than you should be because you can't bear the thought of conceding anything and failing. The ego that makes you tap at the last possible moment right before an injury is possible, right? That's the ego that beats you up on nights when you don't do very well. You have a poor night on the mat and you leave the academy feeling terrible about yourself, right? Well, that's the ego, because the ego is always going to lie to you. It's going to tell you that you're worse than you are. And the flip side of that is on nights that you do incredible, you have what felt like a breakthrough, it was an amazing training session, your ego is going to say, yeah, I got this. Look at me. Look how good I am. It's going to really inflate you. So the idea is that we want a neutral ego that doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, that doesn't lie to us, that doesn't prevent us from tapping, that doesn't, force us to train with too much intensity, right? The willingness to concede things, the willingness to tap, the willingness. Remember, you're training for yourself ultimately. This is your personal journey. It's your, it's something you're doing for you. You're not doing this for anybody else. And so keeping your ego in check is really important. Also, the ego that wants you to represent your belt perfectly. You're a blue belt now. You better be able to tap all the white belts. And when you fail, your ego makes you feel bad. Well, but that's not realistic, right? A purple belt is not someone that can defeat every blue and white belt in the world. I mean, I rolled with a white belt the other day, and he was a skilled white belt, almost a blue belt. A freak, athletic freak, insanely strong, crazy strong, bigger. I'm just a beast. I struggled against this kid. I'm a black belt, and I struggled against this kid. He just worked me. The ego could have said, no, you got to push harder. You got to match that intensity. You got to take it to him. You can't let this guy get the best of you, right? And then maybe I would have gotten hurt. Maybe I would have gotten injured. Maybe I would have strained my back trying too hard. Instead, I was chill. I'm like, you know what? This guy's a beast. I'm going to let him work and we'll see what happens. And, right? You manage the ego so that you can train another day. Any one training session doesn't mean a whole lot. What matters is the patterns that you establish over a long period of time and how you train over a long period of time. So keep that ego under control. It's something you're going to have to manage your whole journey. Right? As a black belt, I still have to suppress my ego. And if you can do that, you're going to be far, far better off. All right, so those are the 6 laws. There are probably more laws than that, but I didn't want this video to be too long. So let me know what you think below. Did I miss something? Is there one of those laws that resonates particularly with you? I'd love to hear it below. And thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.